When the sun vanished behind the jagged cliffs and shadows began to stretch across the valley floor, the world of the early humans would change. The warmth of the day slipped away, and with it, the false sense of safety. Twilight was not just a soft light, it was a warning. Night meant creatures with sharper eyes, keener noses, and more patience than any man. In the darkness, even the whisper of wind through dry leaves felt alive. The cave was a gift and a trap, and inside, the air held the scent of moss, smoke, and sweat. Outside, the rain was starting to fall, tapping on stone-like fingers, drumming on a drum made of bone. The walls offered shelter, but they echoed. Every drip, every footstep, every sleeping breath returned doubled, like the spirits themselves were sighing through the rock. The ground was never dry. Firs, layered upon dried leaves, gave some comfort, but under them the earth pulsed with chill. Even in sleep, the body knew it lay upon something alive and unforgiving. And above, the stalactites wept. Drops of ancient water trickled from the ceiling slow, indifferent tears from a world too old to care. People slept in clusters like animals, their backs to one another, faces turned inward, seeking the heat of bodies to replace the absent sun. There were no pillows, only arms, folded hides, or stones shaped by chance. A father's arm could serve as a cradle, a mother's heartbeat as a lullaby. No one slept alone unless they had done something terribly wrong. The fire was life, even when sleep called. One eye remained on the embers. Someone always watched, taking turns feeding sticks, bark, or bones into the flames. Sparks would rise like ghostly insects, dancing upward until swallowed by darkness. Fire kept the predators away, but it also told them where you were. A cruel, compromised rain brought rhythm. It beat against the cave mouth in uneven tempo, whispering promises of flood or silence. When thunder growled beyond the ridge, the children whimpered. Mothers hummed low songs without words. Ancient melodies passed from breath to breath, like spells meant to hush the sky. And there, nestled beneath layers of animal skins, the tribe drifted into unconsciousness. Not full sleep, never that, but a kind of guarded trance. Dreams came in flickers, images of mammoths, running wolves, lost brothers, and warm summers. They did not understand these dreams, but still, they returned to them every night, as faithfully as they returned to the cave itself. Asterisk rain was never a surprise, was expected, like nightfall or hunger, but its arrival still stirred a quiet discomfort. When water met stone, it spoke in many voices, okay? A soft hiss as it kissed the cave's entrance, okay? A slow drip as it slipped through unseen cracks. A sudden splash from outside, where puddles formed in hollow earth. The people had learned to read the rain. The elders said you could tell its intentions by the way it fell. Thin, icy needles meant warning. Heavy drops like fruit against the rocks meant cleansing. And the slow, endless mist that hovered like breath meant patience and invitation to wait. When it rained, sleep grew restless, the walls grew damp, and the air thickened with the scent of soaked soil. Our furs clung cold to skin, and the smoke from the fire curled lower, heavier, like it didn't want to rise. Its breath felt slower, movements smaller. Even dreams seemed to move through water. Children often clung to their mothers, who whispered to the ceiling in old tongues, asking the rain not to wake the ancestors. The sounds above became the voice of the earth itself, sometimes calm, sometimes angry. No one dared sleep with their feet toward the entrance during storms. The wind, they believed, could steal your spirit through your soles. Near the mouth of the cave, puddles formed where the firelight reached. Flickering reflections danced like spirits, their movements subtle and unreadable. Some said the dead returned with the rain, riding its current through cracks and corners. That's why the oldest slept furthest from the water's echo. The dripping was constant, rhythmic, hypnotic, and over time, the mind began to surrender to it. Eyes would flutter closed, lulled by the repetition. The brain, unable to fight the pattern, sank slowly into the softness of half-sleep. The body curled tighter, seeking warmth. The mind drifted like mist through the dark dot in that place between waking and dreaming. The rain was no longer a threat. It was a song, a lullaby written in ancient syllables of sky and earth. And by the time dawn approached, with its silver breath on the horizon, most had slipped into silence, their worries tucked beneath the skins. Asterisk at the heart of the cave, the fire breathed. It was the only thing that moved with color in a world of gray stone and shadow. Flames licked upward, curling around bone and stick, casting long, restless arms across the walls. It never slept. It was both sentinel and spirit, alive in its hunger. Each night, one member of the tribe was chosen to feed it. It's not a task of honor, but of necessity. To let the fire die was to invite everything outside to come in. Wolves, cold spirits, with no names. The keeper sat beside it, legs tucked under, skin wrapped tight, eyes shifting between the embers and the darkness beyond. Smoke spoke in shapes. It would drift toward the mouth of the cave, curling like fingers beckoning the sky. Sometimes it thickened and pressed low, a warning that rain or something worse approached. Children learned to watch its behavior, how it twisted, where it leaned. The fire never lied. Sleep beside the fire was warmest, but closest to danger. Flickering light revealed too much. Shadows moved, eyes reflected back from beyond the trees, but no one dared sleep without it. Its light was the boundary between the known and the unknown, between warmth and the teeth waiting in the dark. The fire also held memory. Bones from past meals, cracked and charred, still held stories. Ash from last season's flood mixed with this week's leaves. It was a timeline written in soot. Tia, elders sometimes stared into it for hours, murmuring names of those long gone, as if the flames might answer back. When the keeper's head bobbed from exhaustion, others would gently stir. They knew when the wood ran low, just by the sound of the burn. A high hiss meant bark. A deep crackle meant marrow. They fed it carefully, never too much, never too little, like tending to a god with unpredictable moods. And as the fire continued to burn through the night, its light crawled slowly across the walls, illuminating painted hands, forgotten marks, and the curve of a child's sleeping face. It was not just one thing, it was story, rhythm, and boundary, a comfort that burned in the bones long after sleep had come. Asterisk, high above the cave mouth, where the rock bowed inward like the ribcage of a fallen god, bats clung in clusters. During the day, their rustling was faint. At night, it grew louder. Their wings, paper-thin and whisper-soft, made the stone seem alive. A sigh from the ceiling, a stirring breath of something old. No one feared the bats, but they respected them. They were watchers of the night, creatures who saw without light. The bats stirred violently. The tribe knew something was wrong. A predator near, shift, and weather, a crack forming in the stone. The bats warned without words. Below them, sleepers lay in rings, dides curled inward, heads bowed like seeds, waiting for rain. Breath rose in waves, timed to some unspoken rhythm. A babe whimpered. A father stirred. A woman reached for a missing warmth that had once slept beside her, but was now ash in the wind. The cave floor was cold, but they had learned to prepare. Layers of fern, dried grass, and stitched skins formed islands of comfort. Sometimes lice or beetles would find their way in, but the cold kept most pests at bay. Still, every night before sleep, the area was cleared with cautious hands. Outside, the wind howled like wolves arguing with the sky. Sometimes it sounded like a name being called. Sometimes like laughter. The elders said it was the voice of the first humans calling to remind them of the old paths. Others said it was the mountain warning them to be still. When the wind was strongest, the fire smoke bent low. The sparks skipped across the floor like tiny insects. Children hid their faces. Mothers reached for bone charms or knotted hair amulets, hoping the spirits would pass over them in the dark. Sleep came slower on nights when the mountain spoke, but eventually the body gave in. The chill, the sound, the flicker all became one soft thread. Eyes closed, muscles unwound, and beneath the breath of beasts, stone, and shadow, they slept. Not deeply, not safely, but enough to dream another day into being. Not everyone slept at once. It was a rule as old as the cave itself. Someone must remain awake. A pair of eyes always needed to scan the mouth of the shelter, the shadows on the wall, the fire's edge. This wasn't duty. It was survival. No matter how tired, someone always volunteered or was chosen. The watcher sat still, listening, not just for sounds, but for silence that didn't feel right. A wolf makes noise, a bear makes noise, but men with spears can be very quiet. And so the watcher listened with every part of the body, the skin, the teeth, even the bones knew what to fear. It was during these hours that stories were remembered, not spoken. The watcher recalled hunts that went wrong, faces no longer among them, and songs that no one sang anymore. Memory was loud in the quiet. It came in waves, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel. The night offered no escape from thought. The firelight danced across the walls, showing shapes carved long before. Hands, spirals, creatures not seen in many seasons. They didn't speak, but they watched, just like the one guarding the tribe now. It created a strange comfort, King, a sense that others had survived this too. Long before, outside, the rain continued, softer now, a mist more than a storm. It coated the rocks and glass and filled the air with the smell of clay. Occasionally, something moved in the dark, something four-legged and cautious, but the fire kept it back, just a little. The watchers shifted, bones aching from stillness, but they didn't mind. The tribe slept. That was enough. Small snores, soft sighs, a child murmuring through a dream. This was the music of safety. The watchers stared into the fire, letting their thoughts dissolve into its orange glow, and when their time ended, they nudged the next. No words, just a hand on a shoulder, a nod. Silent ritual passed through generations. The new watcher sat up, eyes already adjusting, and the first laid down, curling close to the embers, finally allowed to rest. Asterisk hunger never truly left. Even in sleep, the body remembered. Dreams often carried the smell of roasted meat or the crunch of wild berries. Some awoke with the taste of roots on their tongues. Others muttered names of animals they'd never caught, but always chased, even in the dark. The belly growled softly at night. Bite. There was no anger in it. It was just another sound, like the dripping water or the distant howl. The tribe knew how to quiet it. A warm drink before sleep, a piece of marrow to chew, or sometimes just silence and the promise of tomorrow. Some stored food beside them, hidden pieces of dried fish, hardened nuts, or half-burned chunks of meat, not out of greed, but fear. Storms could last days. Hunts could fail. A mother fed her child with hands she had warmed in her armpits. Every crumb was a treasure. The smell of food lingered in the cave. Smoke from past meals settled into the stone. It was comforting, like sleeping in memory, but it also attracted visitors, silent, sharp-nosed creatures that crept close. That's why they burned bones, to mask the scent, to show the cave was not abandoned. Sometimes, hunger shaped dreams. A man might dream of rivers full of fish, or of a fruit that never stopped growing. Others dreamt of feasts, of laughter, of warm, full bellies, dreams the size of the hunger they held. Upon waking, they often felt lighter, not satisfied, but calmer. Children were the first to stir in hunger. Their bodies grew fast, and rest didn't fill their needs. A mother's whisper in the night, a shared bite of root or meat, tiny gestures that pulled them back into sleep's embrace. Kindness, too, was a form of food, and in those moments, hunger stopped being an enemy. It became part of the rhythm, like the heartbeat in the earth, the soft breath beside you, the flickering of fire on cave walls. It reminded them they were alive, but they had survived another day, and maybe tomorrow the hunt would be kinder. Asterisk, even with fire, even with furs, cold crept in like a whisper. It didn't rush, didn't roar. It seeped through cracks in the stone, through dampness in the floor, through air heavy with rain. Cold had no mercy, no patter, simply arrived and stayed. They had learned to fight it with layers, not just clothes, but closeness. Bodies became blankets. The sleeping circle was tighter than any embrace. Children slept between elders, lovers, wrapped limbs like vines. Strangers learned trust quickly when the frost bit through flesh. Still, noses turned red, fingers curled into fists, toes were pulled beneath hides like secrets. Sometimes a body would shake in its sleep, not from dreams, but from the shiver of marrow. Elders murmured that cold was a spirit, a pale one, with breath like knives. The cave walls stayed damp for days after rain. Moisture clung to the air, turning warmth into a memory. Every breath fogged before the mouth, every exhale a ghost. Yet sleep came, not because of comfort, but despite it. That was strength, to dream in the arms of hardship. On some nights, they heated stones in the fire and placed them at their feet, a trick learned from watching animals burrow close to warmth. It didn't last the night, but it gave the illusion of safety for a little while, enough to ease the body into stillness. Mothers rubbed their children's limbs with oil from fat. Grandmothers wrapped hair around wrists. Men lay silent, fists under necks, dreaming of sons. Cold made them quiet, made them still. But it did not break them. They had outlived many winters and would outlive more. And as dawn crept in with slow, gray fingers, the cold retreated. Not gone, but softened, replaced by the first bird calls, the return of dripping water, and the glow of breath turning warm once more. Another night had passed, and so had to chill at least, for now. Asterisk sleep brought visions. Some were soft, others wild, but all left traces, not on skin, but in memory and sometimes on stone. When morning came, the dreamers often moved to the walls. With fingers dipped in ash or clay, they painted what they had seen: a red spiral, a great beast with many eyes, a figure made of stars. Dreams were not entertainment, they were messages, warnings, gifts. No one laughed at dreams. Even the strangest ones were listened to, examined, remembered. Some believed they came from the bones of the earth. Children dreamt of animals speaking, of their ancestors smiling, of caves within caves, laid wake with wide eyes and quiet mouths. Lay, and the elders would kneel beside them, asking what the spirit had shown. No detail was too small, no dream too foolish. Some dreams came back again and again. A fire turned into water, a bird flying into a tree and becoming a man. These were marked into the walls again and again, patterns, symbols, a language not written, to be read but to be felt, to hold the night and daylight. The cave became a book, a layered skin of memory and meaning. While bodies rested, minds traveled far. Some believed sleep was a kind of death, a visit to another world. In dreams were the footprints left behind when they returned. During storms, dreams grew louder. Shapes twisted. Voices rose. One woman claimed she saw the moon fall into the fire. Another said she spoke with a bear that told her where to hunt. The tribe listened, always, even when they didn't understand, and each morning, with slow fingers and sacred breath, they made their dreams immortal. Painted in silence, lit by morning's gray light, left for others, for those not yet born, so they, too, would know what it meant to dream beneath a stone. Asterisk, there were nights when the cave no longer felt safe, when the wind carried more than rain, when the birds did not sing before sleep, when the fire cracked too sharply, or the silence grew too thick. Those were the nights of watching, of waiting, of listening for the snap of a twig. Predators lived in the trees, eyes that glowed, mouths that didn't need sound to kill. Wolves, yes, but also men, other tribes, hungry and desperate. The cave was shelter, but also a mark of possession, and possession had to be defended. Guards were posted not just at the mouth, but above it, hidden in brush, silent as stone, armed with flint blades, clubs, and bone spears. They did not blink often, did not move unless they must, because any movement could be answered by teeth. Inside, sleep was shallow. Mothers kept a hand on their child's chest. Fathers slept with weapons beneath their hides. Dreams, if they came, were made of footsteps, growls, and fleeing. Sleep was no longer a gift. It was a gamble. Even the fire dimmed during such nights. They covered it with stones, letting only the faintest glow escape, to hide, to protect, to survive. The cave breathed more slowly, as if it, too, were afraid of what waited outside. Sometimes nothing came, just fear, just tension, just the sound of one's own heart loud in the ears. But fear had weight. It clung like damp smoke, and by morning the tribe felt as if they had fought a battle with nothing but silence. Yet still they rose, still they cooked, still they lived, because danger never truly left, simply paused. And they, the people of the cave, had learned to rest in its shadow, to sleep with teeth just beyond the stone. Some nights were different. The moon shone full, casting silver light across the forest and the cliffs. The rain had stopped. The air was cold, but clean, and everything outside seemed to breathe slowly, just like those inside the cave. It was a peaceful night, almost. The moonlight entered the cave in thin lines, touching the floor like soft fingers. It glinted off puddles and shone in the eyes of those still awake. Some worshipped it, others feared it. Untouched, it reminded them of the things they had lost and the things they still hoped to find. Elders said the moon carried messages, that its phases marked time, that its light opened the door between this world and the next. On nights like these, many chose to sleep facing the entrance just to see her, just to let her know they were still here. The stone gleamed wet from earlier rain. Shadows curled in corners, but did not move. The fire was low but steady, and the night felt like it held its breath, waiting for something that would never come. That was the beauty of the moon. It promised nothing and still gave everything. Children asked about the light. Was it safe? Was it watching? And the mothers said yes, always yes, because even a lie, if gentle, could bring comfort, especially when the world outside was too wide, too wild, too unknown to understand. Sleep came gently, like the tide over sand. With the moon watching, their hearts slowed, their breath deepened, And for a few rare hours, rest was not a battle. It was a gift, a true one, cold, quiet, and complete. And in that quiet, they dreamed not of wolves or fire, but of stars, of soft soil, of laughter, the kind that echoed not in caves, but in memory, the kind only the moon remembered. Asterisk, long before furs and mats were laid, the floor of the cave was bone, ancient remnants pressed into the earth by time, fragments of antlers, teeth, jawlines of creatures extinct before memory. The people slept. Above them, unknowingly cradled by the dead. And sometimes they listened. Bones told stories. They cracked differently under fire. They hummed when tapped. The elders knew how to read them not with words, but through weight, shape, and sound. A smooth femur meant peace. A jagged spine foretold sickness. Dreams built on bones were never light. The sleepers didn't fear these bones. They were kin, teachers, reminders that every warmth would one day cool. They added their own, too. The skull of a revered hunter, the ribcage of a sacred animal. They did not bury these things. They let them stay, to protect, to whisper. Sometimes a sleeper would roll over and wake with a mark and imprint of a tooth or a horn in the flesh. This was not seen as harm, but blessing, a kiss from the past. A mark that proved the ancestors still watched, still cared. These signs were shown with pride. Children played with smaller bones, using them as toys or talismans. Hollow ones became flutes. Sharp ones became scratching tools. A cave was not just stone and fire, it was marrow and echo. Even the air carried the dry scent of age. On particularly quiet nights, the ground would seem to vibrate. Some claimed it was the bones speaking. Others said it was the cave breathing through its spine. No one questioned it. They simply listened and slept more still, letting the past settle beneath them. And in that strange comfort, they found rest. The living lying atop the long dead. The present wrapped in memory, and the night holding it all together like a soft, endless thread. Asterisk, caves speak even when no one else does. They carry sound farther, twisting it until it returns as something new. A whisper might bounce for seconds. A sneeze could travel into the deeper tunnels, but the most haunting were the echoes without cause. Sounds with no name. Sometimes, at night, a stone would fall deep inside. A single knock, far away, like a footstep. Other times, it was a breeze that hummed like breath. These were not imagined. Everyone heard them. The cave had its own voice, separate from those who slept within. The elders said the cave was alive, that it had memory, that it repeated moments long after they passed, laughter from years before, the wail of a birth now grown. Even the first, fires crackle, still lingering in stone. And on certain nights, these sounds would return. People didn't fear them. They acknowledged them, paused, murmured a soft word of thanks or warning. They believed in listening more than speaking, because listening might keep you alive, especially in the dark, especially when nothing else moved. The echoes played tricks. A whisper might seem close when it was distant. A sigh might belong to someone who wasn't there, but they never ignored these sounds. Each one had meaning, or at least they believed it did. And belief was stronger than proof. Children learned quickly to be still when the echoes came, to wait, to let the cave finish its message, and only then to resume dreaming, as if their own sleep depended on the cave's mood, and perhaps it did. Perhaps rest was a gift granted only by stone, and when silence returned, they exhaled together, a tribe of breathing stones within a breathing stone, dreaming, echoing, surviving. night after night, voice after voice. Asterisk, the walls of the cave were more than barriers, they were parchment. Hands dipped in pigment pressed against them, over and over, leaving shadows of the living. Some were tiny, some massive, some normal, others twisted with, fingers missing or bent by birth. All were sacred. Night. These handprints seemed to move, not literally, but through the firelight. The shadows danced, the fingers reached, the lines curved, and those who stared long enough swore they could see stories fold, hunts, births, losses, miracles, all told in silence. People dreamed of painting even in their sleep. They would wake with colored fingertips or with dust clinging to their nails. They had no memory of moving, but the markings would be new. A spiral added, a line drawn over an old one, a dot beside a claw. Some believed it was the spirit within them acting while they rested. Others thought ancestors borrowed their hands for a moment. Either way, it was not questioned. The art was left untouched, preserved, interpreted only by those who dared. The pigments were made of blood, ash, crushed stone, mixed with spit, with oil, with time. Each color held meaning. Red for life, black for warning, yellow for the sun they rarely saw. Blue was rare stews only for dreams or the sky that never rained. Children weren't allowed to mark alone. They painted under the eye of elders, not to control, but to guide, to protect the walls from careless stories. Because once a mark was made, it stayed, as permanent as bone, as honest as hunger. And so the cave became a canvas of the unconscious, a map of night thoughts, sacred reminder that even in deepest sleep, the mind reaches outward, leaving its truth for others to see in morning's gray light. Asterisk rain was common. Wind was normal, but thunder, that was something else. When it cracked across the sky, it didn't just shake the trees, it shook the soul. The whole cave would seem to tremble. Fire would gutter. Children would scream. Even adults would flinch. Thunder didn't whisper, it roared. It announced itself like a giant beast clawing the heavens. The elders called it the voice of the tall god, the one who walked above clouds and dropped stones from his fingers when angered. That was what lightning was. Sky stones on fire, on. Storm nights, no one slept easily. Even the fire seemed unsure of itself. They covered their ears. They sang low. They held each other, but they could not hide from it. Thunder reached into the bones, echoed in teeth. It reminded them how small they were. The storm would roll in waves. Silence, flash, boom, silence again. And in those silences, everyone waited, counting heartbeats, hoping the next would be farther away. But often it came closer, louder, like the god was walking toward them. Some lit second fires, believing light might appease the storm. Others offered food, placing bits of dried meat near the entrance. A sacrifice, a plea. Let the noise pass over us. Let it find someone else. Let us dream in peace. But sometimes the storm didn't pass. It sat above them, growling, watching, and those were the longest nights, when even breath felt dangerous, when no one moved unless they had to, when the fire's crackle seemed like an invitation to wrath. Yet, somehow, sleep would still come, eventually, slowly, like moss over stone, and with it, dreams of sun, of dry grass, of quiet skies, and the promise that even thunder must one day sleep. Long before words were spoken, leaves had meaning. Their rustling was not random. Their scent was not unnoticed. They told stories about what passed through the forest, who brushed against them, what creature fed beneath them, and how soon the rain would return. When the wind blew gently, the leaves whispered, a soft sound like breathing. like someone walking beside you, but not touching. It comforted the sleepers, reminded them that the world outside was alive, but not always cruel. Sometimes it sang lullabies, but harsh winds twisted the leaves, made them slap against bark, made them hiss. That was a warning. Something hunted, something moved. In those moments, the people inside the cave grew still, eyes open in the dark, listening not for sound, but for its shape. Before sleep, some would bring handfuls of leaves inside, not for bedding, but for signs. Dry leaves curled tight meant cold ahead. Damp ones with holes meant bugs. Bright leaves, freshly fallen, spoke of change, of seasons, of endings. Children would sometimes play with them, pretending they were wings or scales. But when they slept, those same leaves were placed near their heads, thought to carry dreams, not protect, but guide, as if the forest itself lent a hand to the mind. At night, the cave mouth often filled with leaves blown in by wind. They gathered like guests, like offerings. No one swept them away. In the morning, they were examined, counted, smelled. Sometimes, a strange leaf meant a stranger had passed, or something worse. And so, the people learned to sleep, not just with ears, but with leaves, with eyes half closed, with trust in nature's language. A rustle could be a warning, or a song, or both. And in learning to listen, they learned to rest. Asterisk. Some nights, fog descended like a ghost, crept in without sound, without warning, covering the valley in thick, white breath. Trees disappeared. Rocks turned into shadows. And the mouth of the cave became a doorway to nothing, to a world erased. Fog had no smell, no taste, but it pressed close, touching skin with fingers made of cold. People said it carried the voices of the dead that had let the past walk among them again. That footsteps heard during fog were not always from the living. Sleep came harder on such nights. The air felt tighter, the fire seemed dimmer, and even inside, people pulled furs tighter, eyes fixed on the blank outside. Anything could hide in fog. Predator, enemy, spirit, or a memory refusing to stay buried. Children cried more loudly, but with soft, broken whimpers, as if the fog seeped into their dreams. Mothers held them, whispering old names, not lullabies, names of grandmothers, of stillborn siblings, the fathers who didn't return. Names fog might recognize. The tribe moved closer together, even those who usually slept alone. No one wanted to face the white veil alone, not tonight. They breathed in rhythm, counting each breath as if to make sure they were still here, still warm, still real. And outside, faint sounds, a crunch, a footstep, a whisper, or was it the wind? The cave amplified every sound, made it hard to know, made everything uncertain, and that uncertainty became part of the sleep, a tension woven into every dream. Yet, with time, fog always lifted. By morning, it was gone. The world returned. Trees reappeared. Birds sang, and the cave exhaled. Another night survived. Another. Silence left behind. Asterisk caves often resembled the bellies of great beasts. The way they exhaled mist in the early morning, or how their walls seemed to pulse with silence. Some said they were alive. Not just stone, but sleeping giants, resting with the tribe inside, tolerating them, listening. When the wind blew just right, it entered through small cracks, moving through hidden tunnels, emerging as a sigh at the entrance. A deep, rhythmic breath, warm in summer, cold in winter, as if the cave itself breathed in time with those who lay within. On nights when nothing stirred, the breath was the only sound. A soft, low hum in the bones, It comforted the old, lulled the babies. It reminded them they were not alone, that something older and larger than them kept watch, silent, still, unseen. Some believed that dreams were borrowed from the cave's own memory, that it held the dreams of everyone who ever slept within its walls, that it released them slowly like steam into the heads of the sleeping, one by one, like gifts wrapped in breath. When a child had a strange dream, the elders would say, "The beast breathed into you last night," and the child would nod, not afraid, honored, chosen. Sleep then became not just rest, but communion, a shared space between flesh and stone. Even the animals sensed it. Wolves never crossed the threshold. Deer paused and bowed heads before passing. Birds did not nest in the cracks. It was sacred space, a mouth that did not bite, a breath that did not burn, but still something to be respected. And so the people listened. They lay still. They matched their breath to the cave's rhythm. Inhale, exhale, wait, dream, inhale again, as if being rocked by a stone lullaby, carved by time, and warmed by the presence of all who came before. Asterisk, when eyes closed in darkness, strange lights danced behind the lids, bursts of blue, streaks of red, glimmers that had no source. They weren't dreams, not yet. Tay came first, flickers like fireflies trapped in the skull. Tiny lanterns lit by thought. Children described them as stars. Adults said they were memories. Some claimed they were spirits checking in before dreams began. No one feared them. They were too soft, too curious, and they always left when sleep arrived fully, slipping into nothing. The mind, before sleep, played. It remembered things not asked for. A bird from 3 seasons ago, a smell from a dead grandmother, the weight of a lost stone tool. These thoughts moved like fish under Icene, but unreachable, gone too quickly to grasp dot sometimes. One thought stayed, bright and clear. It might be a face, a name, a fire. These became the night's anchor. Dreams formed around them, grew wild or calm, died, always began there. The firefly that refused to go out, the spark that built a world. The people didn't talk much about this, not because it was secret, but sacred. To speak of what the mind shows before sleep was to risk losing it, like trying to catch smoke. Better to let it be, to smile at the memory, to rest beneath its glow. Some lit a fire and stared into it before bed, trying to match inner light to outer flame, watching the dance, the rhythm, letting their eyes blur until only color remained, then closing them, carrying the glow inward, letting the fireflies guide them home. And so sleep came, lit not by stars in the sky, but by tiny flickers inside, gentle drifting sparks, made not of fire, but memory and magic. Asterisk, before the people slept, they often touched the bark. Long strips from sacred trees hung near the entrance or tied to small stone altars, not to worship, but to speak, quietly, softly, with fingers or foreheads. They pressed worries into wood. Each person had a favorite bark. Some were smooth, like skin, others rough, like old bone. Children used fresh ones. Others chose bark with scent pine, spruce, resin rich, tiza. Elders took the darkest, cracked pieces, the ones that had already listened for many years. No one carved words. There were none, but the marks were still there. Scratches, rubs, lines from nails or sticks. Every touch recorded, every fear, every hope, every unspoken thank you. The bark held them all, never judging, never breaking. It was said that bark heard what the cave could not, that trees remembered the sky, that their skin knew how to hold sorrow without letting it spoil. So when sleep came hard, the people reached for bark, just once, a final touch before letting go. On rainy nights, the bark darkened, absorbed more, held more, and the people believed their pain went with it soaked into wood instead of into their hearts. They breathed easier, slept softer, even if just in their minds. Each season, new bark was chosen. Old ones burned in fire, not to destroy, but to release, to let the smoke carry prayers into sky. A sacred cycle. Sorrow to bark, bark to fire, fire to stars, and in that ritual, the night felt kinder, the dreams more tender, as if the trees themselves watched over the sleepers, swaying slowly, whispering leaf lullabies across time. Sometimes the sky was clear, no clouds, no wind, just endless black above, dotted with stars. But the people didn't just see them, they felt them, heard them, not in words, but in weight, in silence so deep it made your ears ring. They would step outside, wrapped in furs, eyes turned upward. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The stars told enough. They blinked, they moved, they returned, always in patterns, always in time, like old friends, arriving without knocking. Elders said each star was an ancestor's eye, watching, guiding, sometimes warning. A falling star meant change. A cluster meant safety. A missing one meant someone had left this world and now lit. Another children counted them until sleep pulled them inward. Some dreamed of flying among them. Others feared falling into them, but all agreed. The stars were alive, not gods, not tools, just beings older than memory, kinder than men. Inside the cave, the starlight reached only slightly, but that was enough. A shimmer on stone, a sparkle on skin, enough to remind the sleepers that above them, far beyond wolves and rain, something vast watched and waited. On rare nights, the stars seemed to hum, a high, soft sound, made of silence, made of space. The tribe didn't question it. They lay on their backs, breath slowing, letting the sky sing them to sleep, and as eyelids closed, the stars stayed, not just in the sky, but behind their eyes, guiding dreams, softly, always returning. Asterisk rain left behind more than water, softened the earth, turning pathways into mirrors, into traps, into pages. Every footprint became a story. The cave floor held them longer than the sky held clouds, for a day, a week, a season. Before sleep, some would look at the prints. A child's tiny heel, a deer that wandered too close, a dragging tail. They told of what had passed, what had come near, what had returned. Hey, even the brave watched closely, seeing shapes in the mud. Some feared finding the wrong print, a boot that wasn't theirs, a claw too large, barefoot facing the wrong way. These meant danger, spirits, enemies. So before lying down, they always checked. Mud never lied. Children played in it, laughing as it squelched, but even their laughter carried weight. Joy carved into dirt was just as sacred, because not all memory had to be pain. Some could be laughter pressed into earth like petals. Mothers wiped it from cheeks. Fathers cleaned tools with it. Elders traced symbols into it. Circles, lines, dots, runes older than voice, and then smoothed it away. Not to forget, but to begin again. A fresh page each morning. Sometimes a dream would show a footprint, clear, sharp, familiar, and the dreamer would wake and search, looking for it in the real mud, hoping or fearing it was there, as if dreams walked alongside them, leaving marks. And so the mud was respected, not avoided, not cursed, but read. It was the skin of the earth, and in it they found traces of their own souls, Asterisk beneath the cave. Something pulsed. Not loudly, not quickly, but steady, like a second heartbeat, deeper than any drum. People couldn't explain it. They only knew it was there. At night, when all else went silent, they felt it in their bones. Some said it was the river, far below, moving through cracks unseen. Others believed it was the mountain itself, dreaming. A slow, ancient rhythm, one that shaped stone, that knew how to wait, how to breathe without breath. When sleep came lightly, the pulse was louder, a thrum in the ears, a beat in the skin, like being rocked by earth itself. Children found comfort in it. Adults respected it. Elders spoke to it, lips near the floor, whispering secrets. During storms, the pulse slowed. During drought, it quickened. It responded, it remembered. And the people adapted their own rhythms to it. Meals, rest, songs, all in time with the stone's breath. They would place hands flat against the floor before lying down, feeling, measuring, listening. If the pulse felt wrong, they waited. It felt right, they slept, trusting that whatever lay beneath them would keep them steady. Some carved symbols into the floor near sleeping spots, not for decoration, but for alignment, for resonance, believing that certain shapes help the pulse into the body, heal it, calm it, carry it deeper into dreams. And in that surrender, they slept well, carried by something ancient, held by something deeper than fear, something that never stopped, not even for death. Asterisk sometimes, an animal was allowed inside, not as food, not as threat, but as guest. A wounded deer, a starving pup, a bird with a broken wing. These creatures lay beside the fire, eyes wide, but still, learning the silence of sleep among humans. The children watched them closely, shared crumbs, whispered promises, believing that kindness could be understood across species. That warmth was a universal language. That trust could be earned, even in darkness. The animal would tremble at first, then calm, breathing slower, matching the rhythm of the room, becoming part of the group. Not family, not pet, but presence. A reminder of the world outside, gentler and more fragile than imagined. Sometimes the animal dreamed too. Legs twitching, ears flicking, as if running through fields or flying once more. The people saw this and smiled. They knew those dreams, shared them, understood them. Dreams of freedom, of being unafraid. Elders said that animals brought messages, that their sleep carried knowledge, lessons, warnings. One old man claimed he saw his dead brother's eyes in a fox once. No one laughed. They only nodded, as told truths the tongue could not. By morning, the animal would often leave, limping less, moving softly, disappearing into the trees without a sound. And the people would say thank you, not aloud, just in thought, for sharing breath and warmth. In night, and in their absence, the cave felt quieter, as if a piece of the wild had briefly entered their dreams, curled beside their fears, and made the dark a little less sharp. Asterisk dawn had a scent, not sharp, not sweet, but rich. Damp stone, burned ash, sweat cooled by silence, breath shared across bodies. It was the smell of survival. The scent of having made it through one more night before eyes opened. The nose knew. That strange warmth, that trace of old fire, that promise of daylight filtering in through cracks above, pulled sleepers gently from the edge of dream, brought them back to skin and cave and earth. Mothers stirred first, always, stretching limbs slowly, checking children, adding wood to the fire, crushing herbs, touching the ground with gratitude, not rushing, just beginning again, with breath, with stillness. Fathers followed, rubbing eyes, testing joints, sharpening tools, listening for birds, smelling the air as if it spoke a language older than words. Each task done in silence, not because of sleepiness, but reverence. The day was new and sacred. Children woke with yawns and tangled hair, looking for food, for stories, for games. Even they paused to inhale, to sense what the night had left behind. Some nights smelled of peace, others of warning. They could tell, even young noses knew. Sometimes the scent was missing, replaced by fear, a scentless silence. No fire, no warmth. Those were rare mornings, remembered, mourned. A scent never returned, a breath never taken again. But today, the day smelled like life, damp, soft, full, a promise that dreams had passed safely, that the world still turned, that the sky had forgiven, and that tonight they would sleep again. Asterisk after waking, but before leaving, some sang, not loudly, not clearly, just hums, groans, low sounds that rolled off the tongue like smoke. They weren't songs to be remembered. They were meant for the fire, for the cave, for the ashes. Mothers sang while brushing hair, fathers while wrapping hides. Children joined without knowing the words, because there were no words. It's feeling, vibration, a voice given to silence. A thank you offered without asking anything back. The embers glowed in response, not brighter, but steadier, a soft, pulsing light, as if listening, as if absorbing the melody, as if holding the song within the coal itself. The cave warmed in return, not in heat, but in heart. These morning songs were not planned. They rose from the throat like steam. They followed no rhythm, but they united the tribe in one shared tone, one shared exhale, before footsteps scattered into forest and field. Some said the songs kept the dreams from clinging, that without them, the spirits of night followed you, stuck to your back like shadow. So people sang, even badly, even sleepily, just enough to let the dark know it was no longer welcome. By midday, the song was forgotten, but never lost. It stayed in the walls, in the soot, in the space between footstep and echo, waiting for night, waiting for breath, waiting for more. And as evening approached again, the cave remembered, hummed its own low note, calling them back, back to warmth, back to fire, back to sleep. In every cave, there was one shadow that didn't dance, one mark on a wall that never flickered, never shifted, even when flames roared. The people noticed it. They didn't speak of it. They just let it be, a silent companion to every night. Some believed it was a spirit, watching, protecting, or warning. Others thought it was a mark from the first fire ever lit, a burn in stone, permanent, a scar from when the cave first opened its eyes. Children pointed at it in fear. Elders hushed them, not with anger, but reverence. Let the shadow be, they'd whisper. It's older than we are, older than the sun. And so it was left untouched, unnamed, honored by being ignored. At night, it loomed quietly, not menacing, just present. A reminder that not all things needed to move to be real. Not all stories needed to be told to be true. It was there, and that was enough. Some dreamt of it, a figure made of smoke, a whisper without voice, a touch without hand. They woke feeling watched but not harmed, as if the shadow had checked in, measured their soul, and returned to the wall satisfied. Even during storms, when all other shapes quivered, it stood still, like a pillar, like a spine. It was the cave's anchor, the night's eye, the final breath of something too old to name. And so they slept, near it, around it, with it, trusting it, not for comfort, but for continuity. Because even in change, even in fear, the unmoving shadow meant one thing. The cave remembered. Asterisk, when the fire burned long enough, it stopped being fire. It became faces, even, twisting in the light. Not frightening, but familiar, as if the flames remembered people who once watched them, decided to return the gaze. Children were told not to stare too long. The fire shows only what you're ready to see. Still, they stared, seeing noses, eyes, hair swept by flame. Some smiled, others cried. Some disappeared the moment you blinked. Adults saw them too, but said nothing, 'cause to name a flame face was to invite it into your dreams. Better to nod, to blink, to let it pass, like a visitor at the edge of memory, not meant to stay. On quiet nights, when the wood burned clean and slow, the fire was a mirror, not of the body, but of the soul. It showed moods, regrets, hopes, not clearly, but enough. Just enough. Elders claimed the fire judged, not harshly, just honestly. It knew who fed it with kindness, who took too much heat, who gave too little. And so people offered gifts, bark, feathers, hair, tokens to balance the flame's memory. When the last log cracked and fell, the faces faded. Smoke rose, ash settled, and the watchers finally closed their eyes, letting the fire's memory fade with their own, drifting, weightless, and in the dark that followed, they felt lighter, emptier, ready for dreams without judgment, without faces, just warmth, just rest. Asterisk, everyone had a stone, small, smooth, carried during the day, placed near the head at night. Not magical, not sacred, just theirs, piece of earth made personal through time and touch. Some were round, others sharp. Some fit perfectly in the palm, others pressed against the cheek. They were not chosen. They were found on trails, by streams, in the ashes of last winter's fire. Children whispered to them, told them dreams, secrets, worries, then fell asleep, holding them tight, believing the stone would carry those words into the ground, planting them, burying them, healing them. Adults were more quiet. They didn't speak to the stones, but they didn't sleep without them. Hand always reached, touched, confirmed, as if the stone anchored them, reminded them of where they ended and the world began. Some replaced theirs each season. Others kept the same for years. If lost, they grieved, as if a part of them had vanished, not because the stone was special, but because it had shared so much silence. Occasionally, someone would gift a stone, a symbol of love, of forgiveness, of farewell, and those were kept closest, sometimes tied to the wrist with cord, sometimes placed under the tongue during sleep, carrying meaning deeper. And when morning came, the first thing they touched was the stone, not the fire, not the light, just that simple piece of earth, still cool, still quiet, still theirs. Asterisk, in the deepest sleep, something strange happened. You breathed, and it didn't feel like yours. The air was thicker, older, carried something unfamiliar, not wrong, just ancient, as if inhaling someone else's dream. No one talked about it much, but all had felt it. That strange pause, that sudden shift in air, like borrowing breath from a different time, from someone who once slept in your place, from someone who might return. It wasn't frightening, it was grounding, a reminder that sleep wasn't just rest, it was an inheritance. You joined a lineage of dreamers, each borrowing the same breath, each returning it with stories folded inside. Some nights it happened more often, especially after lightning, or during new moons, when time thinned, when cave forgot the present and remembered everything else instead. Children would sometimes wake and say, "I dreamed with someone else's eyes," and the mothers would only nod. That was enough. Because some dreams weren't for you. They just passed through, borrowing your head for a moment. The people didn't resist it, okay? Let it flow. Let the foreign breath fill them, carry them, then leave, like a ghost made of wind, like a stranger who just needed a place to rest. And when they woke, they breathed deeply, their own breath again, solid, familiar, and smiled, because even if they couldn't remember the dream, they had helped someone remember theirs. Asterisk, at last. There was a night when even the fire forgot to speak, when the rain held back, the wind curled outside, and the earth settled. No crack, no footstep, no cry, just silence, total, absolute, thick enough to hold. People didn't fear this silence. They embraced it, welcomed it, like slipping into warm water, like holding a breath for just a little too long. It was the cradle of their kind, the original lullaby. Mothers hummed softer, fathers leaned closer, children sighed into the dark. Even dreams moved slower, like drifting on a quiet river where nothing chased and nothing called. The cave, too, seemed softer, rounder, as if its rough edges had been filed smooth by stillness, as if it smiled, pleased by the hush it held so well. Not a single cough, not a single rustle, only breath. Dozens of them, rising, falling, aligned, a tribe not just living together, but sleeping in unity, woven by silence. Some swore they heard something in that hush. Not words, not music, but something holy, something true. A whisper older than stone, a memory without sound, and so they slept. Not deeply, not wildly, but fully, as if returning home to the beginning, as if becoming stone, just for the night. Asterisk, every night has a final flicker, a last moment before full dark. When the fire's glow no longer reaches the walls, when eyes close fully, when thoughts end mid-sentence, that moment is soft, sacred, easy to miss. Some fought to see it, kept eyes open, held breath, wanted to witness the shift, but it was subtle, a sigh from the fire, a blink from the stars, a final shadow retreating into nothing. That last light carried stories. It touched every face one more time, kissed the cheeks of children, brushed the wrinkles of elders, then vanished, without ceremony, without goodbye. And in that darkness, the body surrendered. No more tension, no more plans, just stillness, just skin against stone, just heat fading into rest. Dreams came slowly. No rush, no shape, just drift, until thoughts curled like smoke, until the mind unknotted, until the world softened to nothing. The people didn't fear that darkness. They knew it, trusted it, held no monsters, only memory, only pause, only sleep. And as the final light left the cave, it left behind peace. A silence that wasn't empty, but full. Asterisk, sleep never lasted forever. Morning always came, but before it arrived, it waited outside at the mouth of the cave, peeking in, holding its breath. Not rushing, not loud, present. The sleepers sensed it in their toes, in their dreams, in the slow return of sound dripping water, distant birds, the crack of stretching bones. Mothers rose first, then fathers, then children. No alarm, just rhythm, as natural as breath, reliable as stone. A ritual passed through centuries. Fire was rekindled, ash stirred, water sipped, bark touched, stones found again beneath hides. The night was over, but not forgotten. It had held them. It had passed. They didn't speak much, not at first, just moved, gently, gratefully, knowing they had survived again. That sleep had done its work. That rest had restored what life had taken. And as they stepped into light, they carried the cave with them, its breath, its dreams, its silence, until night returned. And they returned to it, because in this world, sleep was not escape. It was remembrance, a nightly return to the beginning, to stone, to breath, to dream. Even now, in our beds made of metal and cotton, behind walls of drywall and glass, something ancient lingers in the way we sleep. The rhythms we carry into rest are not new. They are borrowed. It's passed from those who once curled beneath stone, who listened to wolves howl beyond the firelight, who feared the rain not for its noise, but for its silence. Our bodies remember caves we've never seen. The hum of a ceiling fan is not so different from the breath of a fire. The hush before sleep, the search for warmth beside another, the way we face inward when frightened, these are not modern inventions. They are instincts carved into us by 1,000 forgotten nights when the world outside wanted nothing more than to enter and take. We fear the dark, not because we don't understand it, but because we understand it too well. Our ancestors taught us that silence can speak, that stillness can hide teeth, that sleep is never guaranteed. And yet they slept, night after night, storm after storm. They closed their eyes in defiance of chaos and woke to tell the story. Each of us carries a cave within, a small, invisible shelter in the chest where fears are tucked, where warmth is stored, where dreams echo off soft walls. When you close your eyes at night and listen closely, you might hear it, the dripping of old water, the whisper of leaves, the faint snap of a branch that no longer exists. In our dreams, we still walk barefoot through mud. We still count stars we never learned the names of. We still hear the fire call our name. These dreams are not fiction. They are memory, genetic echoes, the blood's wave of remembering what the mind forgot. The cave dwellers never wrote books, never built cities. They mastered something we still struggle to understand: how to sleep beside fear, how to rest with death just outside. Kes, how to find comfort in closeness and meaning in breath. Kes, Mill's wisdom no calendar can erase. And maybe that's why insomnia feels like exile, as if we've been locked out of the cave, denied entrance to that place where the stone forgives, where the fire accepts, where nothing is required of us but stillness. Sleep is not failure, it is return. The cave did not cure pain, but it made space for it. Every night it held weeping, held prayers, held silence too heavy for daylight. Cave did not answer questions, but it never punished them either. It simply stayed, patient, timeless, waiting. We spend our lives building walls, but none are as honest as the ones made of raw stone. None echoed the way a cave does. None listened so well. A house shelters the body. A cave shelters the soul. When sleep comes true, sleep hid is not to the bed we go, but to that shadowed place beneath the mountain. Sometimes a dream carries you there, unannounced, unexplained. You find yourself sitting by a fire, surrounded by figures you've never met but deeply know. No one speaks, no one needs to. You are home for the night. And when you wake, the fire is gone, but its warmth lingers behind the eyes. We are not as distant from them as we pretend. The ones who painted hands on stone, the ones who lit sparks with stone and fear. Their blood is our blood. Their longing is our longing. Their sleep is our inheritance. We do not need torches or wolves to remember. Only stillness, only breath. And perhaps that is the lesson the cave still teaches, long after its stones have cooled. That survival is not conquest, but rest. That strength is not in noise, but in silence. That safety is not armor, but presence. And that the truest dreams are made not in comfort, but in surrender. So tonight, when the lights go out and the city fades behind your eyelids, imagine the cave. Imagine the rain tapping on stone, the fire dancing quietly, the bones beneath your bed humming old songs. Let the fear come. Let the silence stay. Again, close your eyes and return. You are not alone in your sleep. Not truly. You carry a lineage of sleepers, of watchers, of dreamers. You sleep with mammoths, with thunder, with spirits whose names are lost, but whose presence remains. The cave is gone, but the sleep remains. And in that sleep, we are still human. And that may be the most sacred truth of all, that beneath language, beyond time, older than fear itself, there is this one fragile, beautiful thing that never left us our ability to dream, while the world watches and waits. Asterisk, there is a reason why silence before sleep feels sacred, not because it is empty, but because it is full, full of every night that came before, full of every breath ever taken beneath open sky, full of the invisible voices that once sang to firelight and slept beneath dripping stone. Silence is not absence, it is presence too deep to shout. The cave people did not leave behind temples. They did not build pyramids or write in scrolls, but they honored time in a way we've almost forgotten. They honored each night as a return to the dark, to the source, to the place where nothing more was expected of them. In their world, sleep wasn't luxury, it was ceremony, and so they prepared for it, not with pillows or rituals of light, but with arrangement, with touch, with shared breath. Each night they rebuilt a miniature world, safe, warm, bounded by flesh and fire. The cave became a cradle for the soul, not to keep it, but to let it wander, protected. Even the dreams were different then. They were not fractured by light or screens or noise. They arrived like rivers, slow, winding, full, sometimes calm, sometimes dangerous, but always with purpose. People didn't analyze dreams. They lived with them, sat beside them, let them speak without interrogation. The old knew how to listen, to sleep. They could hear it in your breathing, feel it in your skin. They could tell when your spirit wandered too far or when it lingered near the edge of waking. A gentle hand, a whispered word, a drop of cool water on the brow, these were their tools of healing. Sleep was both medicine and diagnosis. We've traded much for comfort. Closed windows, soft sheets, screens that glow long after the moon has risen. But in that trade, we have lost something too. We've forgotten how to be vulnerable in the dark, how to welcome the night instead of fearing it, how to let stillness be our sanctuary. The ones who slept in caves did not sleep because it was safe. They slept because they had to, because there was no other way to heal, no other way to remember, no other way to continue. Sleep was their resistance against cold, against loss, against the silence that too often became final. And in their sleeping, they preserved something sacred, trust. Trust in the earth to hold them, trust in the fire to protect them, trust in each other to remain through the night. Even now, our deepest sleep depends on this ancient trust that we will not vanish in the dark. That morning will return when thunder rolled. They didn't ask why. They listened, accepted, understood that some sounds were meant to pass through you, not be controlled. But, and perhaps, in this, they were wiser than we are. They didn't need to dominate the world, to rest in it. They just needed to belong to it. Today, we fear being unreachable. We cling to light and noise and endless connection. But the cave teaches us the opposite, that true rest comes from letting go, letting the world be as it is, letting our minds retreat into the shadows without shame, letting sleep take us fully. There is no sleep more honest than the one taken beside fire, with stone at your back and someone's breath near your ear. Asleep with no clock, no alarm, only the rhythm of blood and embers, only the beat of a heart not yet broken by time. Perhaps this is why we seek cabins, forests, quiet hotels, not just to escape the world, but to remember a rhythm lost, to recreate, even briefly, the cave, a place where sleep is not interrupted, but invited, not managed, but welcomed like an old friend, barefoot and waiting. We are not separate from the first dreamers. We are their children, their echoes, carry their fears in our bones and their stories in our cells. And every time we surrender to darkness, close our eyes, can trust the body to fall, we honor them. No stone remembers a single name, but it remembers warmth. The pressure of bodies huddled close, the sigh of sleep begun, the heat of dreams whispered into its cracks. Our ancestors are not lost, they are layered in the walls of time, and in the silence between breaths, and when your night comes, and the fire within fades. May you remember this, you are not the first to close your eyes with questions unanswered. You are not the first to drift into darkness, uncertain, but you are part of a line that always woke again, always survived, always slept in the shadow of something greater and called it home.